The noise around Shedeur Sanders and his draft stock has reached the point where everybody thinks they've got a say, and Ryan Clark decided to step into the spotlight with his take. And honestly, it was less about analysis and more about adding fuel to a fire that doesn't even exist. Clark, with all his years in the league and all the credibility he's built as a media voice, had a chance to highlight what makes Shedeur unique, resilient, and NFL-ready. Instead, he decided to roll with the same tired playbook critics have been using against confident young quarterbacks for decades. Maybe he's not as polished as people think. Maybe that confidence borders on arrogance. Maybe he's a little entitled.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
You notice how those words always seem to come out when the quarterback in question is a young black man? When he dares to carry himself like he belongs before the league has decided he's earned it? Let's be real here. Shedeur Sanders has done nothing but prove himself. This is a quarterback who stepped into chaos at Colorado, behind one of the worst offensive lines in college football, and still looked composed, still made plays, still gave his team a chance in games where most QBs would have been eating turf for 4 quarters. That's not arrogance. That's composure. That's a young man showing poise under fire. And yet somehow, Clark wants to frame that calm, that presence, as a red flag. It's disappointing, because Ryan Clark knows better. He knows what it's like to grind for respect in a league that is quick to label, quick to dismiss, and even quicker to judge. He knows that narratives matter, sometimes more than tape. He knows that when he speaks, the words don't just vanish into thin air. They stick. They get picked up by analysts, repeated by scouts, and parroted by fans who've never even watched a full Colorado game. And now, instead of being part of building Shedeur's momentum, he's fanning the flames of doubt. Let's address this idea of arrogance. What has Shedeur done that's arrogant? Has he trashed opponents in interviews? No. Has he demanded attention before earning it? No. Has he skipped preparation because he thought his name would carry him? Absolutely not. The kid is in the film room, on the practice field, and on the sideline conducting himself like a professional already. The only thing he's guilty of is being confident in his ability and unbothered by the noise. And that right there, when it comes from Shedeur Sanders, isn't framed as confidence. It gets spun as arrogance. Funny how that works. When Joe Burrow lit cigars after a championship win, he was Joe Cool. When Baker Mayfield planted a flag at midfield, he was fiery. When Johnny Manziel threw up money signs mid-game, he was a showman. But when Shedeur calmly points to his wrist to say time's up after a clutch performance, suddenly it's cocky. Suddenly it's entitled. Suddenly Ryan Clark has questions about polish. It's not critique, it's coded language. It's the same narrative recycled, dressed up as tough love, but really just reinforcing the same bias that has followed black quarterbacks forever. They can't just play the position, they have to justify their personality while doing it. And let's not forget the pressure Shedeur is already under. Being Deion Sanders' son is not a gift, it's a test. Every snap he takes is judged not just against his peers, but against a Hall of Famer's legacy. Every mistake he makes is magnified because critics are ready to scream nepotism. Every success he has is dismissed, as well, of course, his dad's the coach. It's a no-win situation, unless you're Shedeur and you refuse to let the outside noise shake you. And that's exactly what he's done. Clark's comments also missed the bigger point. Shedeur's readiness for the NFL isn't just about arm strength or footwork, it's about mindset. And Shedeur has shown over and over again that he's got the maturity, the poise, and the resilience to succeed at the next level. He's not rattled by pressure. He's not broken by adversity. He doesn't crack under scrutiny. If anything, he thrives in it. That's the very definition of polish. That's what you want in a franchise quarterback. So when Clark says he may not be as polished as people think, what game is he watching? Did he not see Shedeur put up numbers while being hit on nearly every drop back? Did he not see him carry Colorado on his back when the roster around him was still in rebuild mode? Did he not see the way Shedeur handled himself in press conferences? never throwing teammates under the bus, never dodging accountability, never letting the moment get bigger than him? That's polish. That's leadership. That's NFL ready. And here's the kicker. Ryan Clark knows how narratives shape draft stock. He knows that front offices love to latch onto words like arrogant, not ready, or entitled as an excuse to undervalue players. And whether he intended to or not, that's exactly what his comments did. They handed fuel to the doubters, gave them a soundbite to weaponize. That's not just unfair to Shedeur. It's reckless. Because at the end of the day, Shedeur Sanders isn't just another quarterback prospect. He's a young man who has carried himself with grace under extraordinary pressure, who has produced in spite of adversity, who has lived up to his father's impossible legacy while carving out his own. He's more than ready for the NFL. The real question is the NFL ready for him? Is the league ready for a quarterback who refuses to play small, who refuses to apologize for his confidence, who refuses to let critics like Ryan Clark write his story for him? Because make no mistake, Shedeur isn't going to let one comment define him. He's been doubted before. He's been overlooked before. And every time, he's proven people wrong. Draft day won't be any different. When his name gets called, it won't be because of hype or nepotism or media spin. It'll be because he's earned it. Because the tape doesn't lie. Because leadership doesn't lie. Because polish doesn't lie. And when he steps onto that NFL field and starts delivering, when the wins start coming, when the stats start piling up, when teammates start swearing by his leadership, Ryan Clark's words are going to look like exactly what they were: noise. Empty noise. The kind of noise Shedeur Sanders has been tuning out his entire life. So if Ryan Clark thinks he shook Deion Sanders with those comments, he's got it twisted. Deion's been hearing critiques like that since the 80s. He built a career on proving people wrong. And now his son is doing the same thing. The Sanders family doesn't crumble under criticism. They sharpen. They get better. They make you eat your words. And that's exactly what Shedeur is about to do. So let's call it like it is. Ryan Clark missed the mark. He turned a young man's confidence into a liability, his poise into a question mark, his readiness into a debate. But the truth? Shedeur Sanders is more prepared, more polished, and more mentally ready for the NFL than half the quarterbacks who've gone in the first round over the past decade. And when he proves it, the only thing Ryan Clark will have exposed is how wrong he was. What about you? Do you think Ryan Clark was way off base with his critique? Do you think Shedeur is being unfairly targeted because of his confidence and his last name? Drop your take in the comments below. And if you want more unfiltered breakdowns, behind-the-scenes truths, and the kind of drama the mainstream media won't tell you straight, make sure to subscribe. Because when critics come for Shedeur Sanders, we'll be right here every time, setting the record straight. The Shedeur Sanders conversation isn't just about one young quarterback's draft stock. It's about perception, power, legacy, and the way sports media can make or break a narrative before a single snap of NFL football has even been played. And Ryan Clark? Whether he meant to or not, he just gave us a masterclass in how not to handle that responsibility. Think about it. Clark knows how the game works. He's been in locker rooms. He's heard the whispers that don't get reported. He knows the difference between a quarterback who has the goods and one who's just riding hype. And yet, instead of focusing on what Shedeur has actually shown us, on the field, in the locker room, in the way he carries himself, Clark chose to feed the laziest possible narrative. Confidence equals arrogance. Composure equals entitlement. Why? Because that's the easy story. That's the headline that writes itself. It's way harder to admit the truth. Shedeur Sanders is one of the most uniquely prepared quarterback prospects in years, and that preparation doesn't fit the NFL's usual script. See, the league doesn't like when rookies come in already too polished, too self-aware, too media savvy. They like projects. They like young guys who can be molded, shaped, broken down, and built back up. They like control. And Shedeur Sanders? He's not walking in asking for permission. He's walking in already showing he belongs. That makes some people uncomfortable. And instead of celebrating that, Clark decided to label it a problem. Let's call it what it is. It's lazy commentary that underestimates the pressure Shedeur has already endured and overstates the supposed risks of his personality. Because let's look at the facts. This is a quarterback who left Jackson State with video game numbers. And before anyone tries to say small school competition, remember, every time Shedeur has stepped up against bigger programs, he's delivered the same poise and accuracy. He transitions to Colorado, and suddenly he's the face of a national conversation, not just because of his last name, but because of how he performed. And remember, this wasn't on a championship-caliber roster. This was on a team mid-rebuild, with glaring weaknesses everywhere, especially that offensive line. Most quarterbacks in that situation, they fold. They press. They try to make impossible throws, rack up turnovers, and lose the locker room in the process. Not Shedeur. He stayed within himself, played smart football, and still made his teammates believe they were in every game. That's leadership. That's maturity. That's readiness. But somehow, Ryan Clark looks at that and decides the story is entitlement? Come on. And let's not ignore the shadow of Deion Sanders in all of this. Because that's really where this critique comes from. Clark, and people like him, can't separate Shedeur the quarterback from Shedeur the son of primetime. And that's not fair. Yes, Deion is a larger-than-life personality. Yes, his presence amplifies the spotlight on Shedeur. But instead of giving Shedeur credit for thriving under that, the narrative shifts to he's only confident because of his dad. That's not analysis. That's dismissal. That's erasing the individual accomplishments of a player who, in his own right, has earned the respect of his peers and the fear of his opponents. The truth is, Deion hasn't given Shedeur a shortcut. If anything, he's made the road harder. Every time Shedeur steps on the field, he's not just playing for himself. He's playing to justify his father's faith. He's playing against a world that's itching to scream nepotism at the first sign of a bad throw. He's playing against every old-school voice in the NFL who doesn't want to see a confident young black quarterback succeed. That's a different kind of weight. And Shedeur carries it with calm. Ryan Clark could have acknowledged that. He could have praised Shedeur's resilience, highlighted the way he handles pressure, and pointed out that his confidence is exactly what you want in a leader of men. Instead, he went for the cheap critique. And here's the problem with that. Clark knows his words have power. You think front offices aren't listening? You think GMs and scouts don't lap up every piece of media narrative to help justify their draft boards? They do. All the time. And when a respected former player like Ryan Clark says, "I don't know if he's as polished as we think," that becomes ammo. It gives teams an excuse to pass, to doubt, to undervalue. It turns Shedeur from legit franchise QB prospect into maybe a second-rounder who needs time. But let's be honest, does he really need more time? Look at what he's already shown. He's accurate. He's poised. He's cerebral. He doesn't get rattled. He doesn't panic. He's efficient in decision-making. He's proven he can handle media pressure without flinching. That's polish. That's readiness. That's what separates a college star from an NFL starter. The only thing Shedeur hasn't proven yet is that he can't win over people who've already decided not to believe in him. And guess what? He doesn't need to. Because the NFL is a results business. And Shedeur has been producing results his entire career. This whole debate about arrogance and entitlement is nothing but smoke. It's distraction. It's the media doing what the media does best, shaping a story out of vibes instead of reality. And the reality is, Shedeur Sanders is as prepared for the NFL as any quarterback prospect we've seen in the last 5 years. When you peel back the noise, when you strip away the narratives, when you actually watch the games, the truth becomes obvious. This kid has it. The presence, the arm, the mind, the leadership, and the fact that people like Ryan Clark want to twist that into a liability says a lot more about them than it does about Shedeur. And here's the thing, Deion Sanders isn't shaken by Clark's words. He's disappointed, sure. He's frustrated, definitely. But shaken? No. Because Deion has lived the story. He was called arrogant, flashy, cocky, and entitled his entire career. And then he proved everyone wrong and became a legend. Shedeur's path is shaping up the same way. Let them call him arrogant. Let them say he's entitled. Let Ryan Clark question his polish. Because when draft night comes, and when Shedeur takes his first NFL snap, none of that will matter. The game will speak for itself. And when the game speaks, it silences everything else. So here's what's going to happen. Shedeur Sanders is going to walk into the NFL, face all the same doubts, all the same critiques, all the same recycled narratives. And just like his father before him, he's going to answer every one of them on the field. With completions, with touchdowns, with wins. And when that happens, Ryan Clark's words will age exactly the way all lazy critiques do, badly. They'll be remembered as noise. Empty words. Another example of how sports media tried to shape a story and failed. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback prospect. He's the future of the position. And no amount of media spin is going to change that. So if you're listening to Ryan Clark and letting that cloud your judgment, do yourself a favor. Go watch the tape. Watch the calm in the pocket. Watch the accuracy under pressure. Watch the leadership in the huddle. That's not arrogance. That's greatness in progress. And when Shedeur proves it on Sundays, we'll all remember who believed and who didn't. When you hear someone like Clark say Shedeur isn't as polished as we think, you've got to pause and ask, what does polished even mean in this context? Because if polished means handling adversity with composure, Shedeur checks that box. If polished means being able to speak to the media like a pro without fumbling over words or dodging accountability, he checks that box too. If polish means leading teammates with confidence and earning respect in the locker room, again, box checked. So when Ryan Clark says Shedeur might not be polished, what he's really doing is moving the goalposts. He's shifting the narrative away from what Shedeur has shown to something vague, something subjective, something that sounds smart but doesn't actually hold weight. And that's the dangerous part of these critiques. They sound analytical, but really, they're just opinion dressed up as fact. Let's not pretend Shedeur hasn't already proven himself under fire. Look at Colorado's season. That offensive line couldn't protect him if their lives depended on it. He was pressured, hit, sacked more times than you can count. And yet, he didn't crack. He didn't start forcing bad throws. He didn't start pointing fingers. He didn't spiral. He stayed calm, made smart decisions, and still gave his team a chance to compete in games they had no business being in. That's polish. That's maturity. That's what separates quarterbacks who can survive in the NFL from those who can't. And let's not forget, this isn't just about football. It's about the weight of legacy. Being the son of Deion Sanders isn't a golden ticket. It's a spotlight that burns hotter than most people can handle. Every single time Shedeur takes a snap, he's not just playing against the defense in front of him. He's playing against the expectations of carrying his father's name. And instead of crumbling, he's risen to it. Most prospects buckle under half that pressure. But Shedeur, he's thriving in it. That's not arrogance, that's resilience. That's a young man who's been preparing his whole life for this moment. Now, let's address the word entitlement. Clark suggested that Shedeur walks around like he's already arrived. But let's flip that on its head. Why shouldn't he carry himself like that? He's earned the right to stand tall. He's earned the right to speak with confidence. Isn't that what we want from quarterbacks? Isn't that what separates leaders from placeholders? The NFL drools over guys who have alpha presence in the locker room, who command attention the second they walk in. They call it swagger, confidence, leadership, until it's Shedeur, and then suddenly it's arrogance. Suddenly it's entitlement. Funny how that works, isn't it? This is where the double standard comes in. When Joe Burrow walks with calm and confidence, he's Joe Cool. When Baker Mayfield planted a flag at midfield, he was called fiery. When Johnny Manziel flashed money signs, he was a showman. But when Shedeur points to his wrist after a comeback win, he's cocky. When he speaks confidently about his preparation, he's entitled. No, that's not objective critique. That's bias, plain and simple. And Ryan Clark feeding into that bias is disappointing. Because he knows better. He knows how narratives can follow a player. He knows how one comment can shape how scouts talk, how teams evaluate, how fans perceive. And instead of breaking the cycle, he fueled it. Here's the reality. Shedeur Sanders is more prepared for the NFL than most quarterbacks who've entered the draft in the past decade. He's got the tape, he's got the poise, he's got the leadership, and he's got the work ethic. The only thing he doesn't have is universal approval from analysts who can't separate his confidence from arrogance. But here's the twist. He doesn't need their approval. He doesn't need Ryan Clark or any other media voice to validate him. Because Shedeur's validation comes from the work he's already put in, from the respect he's earned in his locker room, and from the results he's delivered under pressure. And when draft day comes, and some team takes a chance on him, they're not just getting a quarterback. They're getting a player who knows what it means to carry weight, to silence doubters, to rise above narratives. They're getting a leader who's been tested more than most rookies ever will be before stepping foot in the NFL. That's what Clark missed. That's what the critics keep missing. They're so focused on nitpicking Shedeur's demeanor that they're ignoring the bigger picture. This kid is ready. More ready than most. And if you can't see that, you're not analyzing, you're projecting. The truth is, Shedeur Sanders has already won. Not because of hype. Not because of legacy. But because he's built himself into the kind of quarterback who doesn't just survive pressure. He thrives in it. And in the NFL, that's everything. So let Ryan Clark keep questioning polish. Let the critics keep throwing words like arrogant and entitled around. Because when Shedeur hits the field and starts proving himself on Sundays, all of that noise is going to fade into the background. Just like it always does when the game speaks louder than the commentary. And here's the kicker. Shedeur's not even playing for them. He's not out here trying to convince Ryan Clark or any analyst that he's ready. He's out here playing for his teammates, his family, and the legacy he's building for himself. That's bigger than media narratives. That's bigger than hot takes. That's unshakable. So to Ryan Clark and anyone else who wants to question Shedeur's polish, here's the reality. The only polish that matters is the kind you show when you're down by 2 touchdowns. The pocket is collapsing, and the entire game is on your shoulders. And Shedeur Sanders has already proven he's got that. The rest? Just noise. Now let me throw it back to you. Do you think Ryan Clark's critique was fair? Or do you see it as another example of the media trying to control the narrative of confident young quarterbacks? Do you think Shedeur has already proven he's NFL ready? Or are the critics blind to what's right in front of them? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more unfiltered takes, more truth behind the headlines, and more stories about the moments that really matter, make sure to subscribe. Because Shedeur Sanders is on the verge of proving everybody wrong. And we're going to be here to cover every step of it.